What's the most used man-made material on Earth? I'll give you the answer. Concrete. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. Have you ever stopped to think about the sidewalks, driveways, bridges, or the buildings around you? They're all made from concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we'll explore a unique concrete-related topic with the help of industry professionals shaping the trade's future. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even proponents of competing materials. We'll get their views on concrete and their visions for its future. So get ready to mix things up with Concrete Logic, where we turn the spotlight on the material that's everywhere but often overlooked. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. And now, here's your host, Seth Tandit.
And welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today I have Jeff Slagle. He is I knew I was going to lose it, Director of Key Aggregate Accounts. Is that right, Jeff?
Correct.
With Chaney Enterprises. He has agreed to come on today and talk about a subject that I don't think we've really talked about too much, but we're going to talk about kind of what mixed designs were like about 30 years ago and kind of how they've changed through the years, what makes a good mixed design. And if we got time, we're going to kind of look out and try to guess what mixed designs are going to look like 10 years from now. But before we get started, I just want to remind everyone there are several ways that you can support the podcast. And the first way is if you go to the concratelogicpodcast.com website, on the homepage, there are a couple ways to get a hold of me. There's a contact option at the top. So there's a menu at the top, and one of those says contact. If you click on that, or you can click on, there's a little microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can leave me a voicemail. But what I'm looking for is folks to reach out and give topic or guest suggestions. So if you can tell me what you want to hear, what you want to learn about, who you want to hear from, that is greatly appreciated, and also makes this podcast for you, because that's what this podcast is about. And you can also, someone did this the other day, and it just I assumed everyone knew this, but if you have a problem, a concrete problem that you just want some help on, please reach out and ask for. If I can't help you, just doing this podcast, I have a great network of folks that are going to be willing to help, so I can connect you with folks. So if you got a problem, please reach out. The next way you can help out is on the same Concrete Logic podcast page is at the top, there's a donate button. It's the top right part. It's a blue button. Click on that, and you can give any amount that's greatly appreciated. Folks have donated whatever amount that you think the podcast is worth to you. Please donate. And then the next way is if you're in the concrete industry and you want to further your education and you enjoy the format of the podcast, make sure to check out concratelogicacademy.com. It's the same kind of format, but we add quizzes to the podcast. So to make sure that you're grasping or absorbing what we're trying to educate you on. We can also give you, if you're a professional engineer, Pete, if you need continuing education credits or professional development hours, we can give you the certificates or the backup for that as well. So please check that out as well. With that, Jeff, let's get into the topic at hand. We're going to start with what mixed designs look like about 30 years ago, and then we're going to kind of come up to present day. And if we have time, we're going to maybe guess what the future is like. But if you want to tell a little bit more about yourself and what you do, and then we'll start on the topic. How's that?
Sure. Perfect. I've kind of had an interesting career in the ready mix industry, starting in 1995. I didn't know a rock from a piece of sand from cement in 1995. I was in the golf business for 10 years. I was $13.23. I get hired by Chaney Enterprises and as a sales trainee, and I really went through an intensive program. We had a concrete block manufacturing facility at the time, so I spent time in our block plant, our aggregate mines, concrete plants, job sites, in trucks, in mixers, in dump trucks. I did that for about a year, and then took over our local area as a sales rep. And then by 2002, I became sales manager for 9 reps with all of our products, aggregates, supplies, ready mix, through the Mid-Atlantic area. Pretty much at that point was just Maryland and DC. And then 2009, we bought out a partner in Fredericksburg that was Row Concrete. So I went over there in 2009 as GM to kind of get that place changed over how we wanted to run. Obviously, the market was not good in 2009, and our partner was all but ready to say, you guys can have the rest of it. So I had some lean times in that Fredericksburg market for a handful of years. So I did that till in 14, and then took over as concrete operations manager as we grew into Virginia, do our acquisitions in Richmond through Green Rock, and worked on those integrations to get that done. As concrete operations manager, concrete operations officer, vice president of concrete operations. And now I am living in South Carolina and traveling Virginia and North Carolina and seeing customers and trying to grow our business. Just being around concrete plants and the product is either you love it or you don't. If you don't love it, you need to change fields for sure. If you don't want to go out on the job site some days and just smell it coming down the chute, then you're in business.
That's right. It's like getting a cup of coffee in the morning.
You got it.
Yeah. So we kind of picked 30 years back. It's almost 40 years now, Jeff. About the late 90s.
Yeah.
So kind of set the table there. What were the mixed designs like back then? And then just kind of sense of, was there a difference between, I would assume there was a difference between now and then. I honestly, I started shortly thereafter, and I could tell you the first thing, that wasn't the first thing I was thinking about was mixed designs. I was just trying to figure out I started out in the field as a field engineer. I was just trying to figure out how to talk to everybody and survive out in the field. So what were mixed designs like back then?
Honestly, in 95, 96, I don't know if we had any compression mixes at all. At that point, our company was more of a residential focused company, and customers wanted a 5-bag, 5.5 bag, 6-bag, 6.5 bag. I don't know if you remember those days, but it was, we call that more of like a prescriptive mix, where our architect or engineer says you need a minimum of, 700 pounds of cement. You still only need 3,500 PSI. Why we're using 700 pounds of cement, but it was very, very prescriptive. So obviously the big change is changing everything from bag mixes over to, compressive strength mixes and PSIs. And that really grew with us as we grew into more of the commercial, became more known, but really we're basics. When you get down to it, it's not rocket science. It's a coarse aggregate, a fine aggregate, water and cement, mix it together. It's going to hydrate and boom, it's going to get hard. You're going to have cement. But we just had basic, water reducers. There was some of the like lignin based high ranges around, but they were really not very good. And then the polycarboxylate stuff came out probably in the mid to late 90s with us, which really kind of changed the game a little bit from high range. It allowed you to do more stuff. But big difference back then is, you use like a mid-range water reducer, or may use some air-entrainment because we're in that Mid-Atlantic area where we really see the freeze thaw. But there was not a whole lot else out there. There was no Eclipse. There was no viscosity modifiers. It was just plain Jane. You might put a little bit of air entrainment in there or a little bit of mid-range just so you can kind of, and we didn't do it to cut back on cement. We did it more to, protect ourselves and the customer from them ordering a 4 and pouring a 7.
Were there any, so we talked about it in previous podcasts a little bit, but the changes of aggregate, over time as you, just naturally as you work your way through a quarry, the rock veins change and things like that locally. But back then, were there any changes in the aggregate? Was it still based around, you see a lot in the specs now that they nothing more than a 3/4 inch aggregate and things of that nature? Was that kind of the same?
Pretty similar.
Then?
Yeah, back then, and any kind of spec work, it was, usually 1 inch minus, because, your 3/4, your 57 is going to go from, 1 inch minus for sure. So that was pretty similar. From an operational standpoint of running a ready mix plant, the thing that's really changed from back then, all of our plants had 3 bins back then. You got 3 overhead ag storage bins for sand, and you have 2 materials. Obviously, one's got to be your sand, one's going to be some kind of a pea gravel or a number 7, number 8, and then some kind of 57. And then as things got blended, and we're a company that manufactures, wash gravel. We're going to be in the stone quarry business end of 2026 south of Richmond, but pretty much gravel. So we would actually go and try to P2P things on commercial work and say, you're speccing a bluestone when we can get the same material out of a 3/4 wash gravel for the same thing. So that's been a big deal for us on that. But so many different blended mixes now is the thing. You got to add a pea gravel, a 3/4 stone, and a sand, and then all your other stuff. It really gets tough when you're doing multiple projects during the course of a day running a concrete plant.
Yeah.
You're draining bins and then filling it back up.
Yeah. So, and there was no was there any introduction of SCMs at all back then that you can recall?
There was no SCMs back in 90. That probably came about 1998 when Blue Circle Cement acquired Newsem, which was your first slag really on the market in this area. It was manufactured in Baltimore. So it was close by. And it's funny that the sales rep that was rolling that out back in the day in the Mid-Atlantic, I'm still very close in the days working down in Florida and Chicago for a major company. It was very interesting. That was it. And it was Newsem, and we used that. Customers, always kicked their feet up, hated it. They didn't want it. Obviously, you're in the field, Seth. It delays your set a little bit, which is great in the summertime, but not so much in the wintertime for sure. And fly ash probably became prevalent around 2000, 2001 in that Mid-Atlantic area for sure. And that was a hard push to get customers to go with ash for sure.
Is that where you want to go next? Do you think that was the next turning point in the last 30 years? Is the introduction of...
Yeah, the SCMs and all the additional pozzolans for sure. I mean, slag's still an outstanding product. I tell everybody today, if I'm going to do a brand new concrete driveway, I'm doing 50% slag mix for sure. I'm going to get better long-term strengths on it. And I like that nice light color look you get to it. It's a great looking product when you hit it. Fly ash, not so much. But we really, when fly ash became prevalent, we were getting it from a couple different sources. And it was, I think you could buy it for a bag of peanuts. Nothing now. It's creeping up on cement numbers, but fly ash really has a lot of redeeming qualities. And so we couldn't get customers to buy in and try it. So we went ahead and did our own branded mixes, and we called them Chaney Crete driveway mix, Chaney Crete, and we just slid a little fly ash in, and the customers were like, "This is amazing. It's so buttery and creamy." So that really got us over that. Then we went to them and said, "Look, guys, you're using 15%, 18% ash. That's performing good for you. You think it finishes better?" So that really jumped the gun then, and then now it's common. You're really not going to have a whole lot of mixes out there nowadays that don't have some kind of ash or slag or some kind of pozzolan in them for sure. I don't know if you get hung up on this too much, Seth, but like the Mid-Atlantic area, like your fine aggregate is very reactive. So on your ASRs, you need some kind of ash or you need some kind of slag to go ahead and mitigate that portion of it.
I don't think I ever thought about that or talked about that. So, slag and fly ash were introduced. I like that way of, branding it and supplying it. There's a lot more flexibility to do that on the residential side, isn't there? When 100%. You can do that and introduce it to those guys.
We just did it residentially. Our branded mixes were and they're like, well, "What's your strength on them?" Don't worry about it. Everything's going to meet and we're all good to go. But yeah, that's residential for sure. And now, but 30 years ago, you never saw slag or ash, demanded in a specification. Now, a lot of times it's required. We've done some power plant work where, power plants generate, if they're coal burning plants, they generate the fly ash. So they want to move it. So we actually did a project that we did 60% ash on and 40% cement. It was for a power plant. And it was wild for sure.
Yeah. I talked to someone yesterday, actually, that's working on the Hampton Roads Bridge and Tunnel. And they were sharing that you said slag. There's quite a bit of slag they're using. And they're also using every yard has 25 pounds of silica fume. They use a lot of silica fume. But they're designing for 100-year mix is what they're saying. And then we were just talking. It's like, how do you know this thing's going to last 100 years?
Mhm.
But I guess it's VDOT. VDOT's done. They do a lot of research and testing and things of that nature. So somebody came up and cooked that one up.
Yeah, we just finished up that, I guess maybe 2 years ago, that Harry Nice Bridge from Maryland into Virginia on 301. And that was built, that was a 100-year lifespan of that. We had a plant sitting on site, as well as we had a plant on site in a partnership JV when the new Woodrow Wilson Bridge was built. And those mat foundations at the bottom of that river were 75% slag mixes.
Wow.
Just because it was such mass concrete to keep the heat down.
Okay. We're jumping ahead. Let's stay on track, Jeff. So we're in the early 2000s. That's when you said there's an introduction of SCMs. What do you think is the next? And one thing I wanted to, you mentioned P2P, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. Can you explain that real quick?
It's prescriptive to performance. Instead of being told, we're the producers. Instead of being told, you've got to have this, I love it, Seth, and I'm sure you've seen it. They want a 0.38 water cement ratio for a 3,500 PSI mix. But what is that? Let us give you a 3,500 PSI mix. We're the ones that have to guarantee it in 28 days, right? So let us put in there what we need to put in there to get that. So just getting away from them telling us exactly how the mix needs to be to us saying, what do you want to perform at? And at what time frame do you need to perform at that? Do you need a early strip, 2-day mix? Do you need you need PSI in 28 days? But yeah, that's just getting it kind of out of the engineer's hands and into the producer's hands who do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that with Colin Lobo from NRMCA, and he does a great job explaining it. All right, so that's P2P. I wanted to make sure everyone understood what that was. Okay, so we're early 2000s, introduction to SCMs. What's the next kind of iteration of mixed design?
Next thing would be, your high range water reducers. In the 70s and 80s, they were lignin-based materials. Really didn't work too well. And then I would say late 80s through early 2000s, they became like a polycarboxylate material. But still, that material on high range, you remember the days of, putting a 5-gallon bucket of high range on the truck, and they'd add it when they get out to the job site because you had like 30 or 40 minutes and that stuff's ready to go. It's ready to go. But now we're past those two products. And honestly, I don't know the stuff they're putting in nowadays, but it's magic. I mean, you can put it on and dry for an hour and add 3 or 4 gallons of water, and it's right back to where it was. And now it's so versatile with your high ranges. I mean, before it was, okay, we're going to use 2 ounces of 100-weight just to make sure we're good. And now I've seen them, 2 or 3 is your standard dose, but now they're going to, 6, 7, 8 ounces of 100-weight. And the products you're seeing come out of there with your self-consolidating concrete. And so that was a huge jump for the industry. It really allowed you to control the strength, the material, and not have to overflow with water and know you had the time to make it work. So that's probably really significant.
When were those introduced? Like mid-2000s or?
I would say mid-2000s to the end of 2000s. My experience was probably 2009, 10, 11. You probably didn't live through the hell that was trying to get air-entrainment level in a high-range mix. It was an absolute nightmare. We threw away more loads in Fredericksburg, Virginia in a year period. I couldn't take it. And I had Grace in there 10 times doing trial batches in the lab. And they pretty much said, we don't understand why it's not being level. So, but Sika made a great product. They're 2100. So I flipped it over to that and never had a problem. Prior to 2012, to try to air and train a high range mix, you're going to have one load, you got 8% air, 9% air. The next one, you got 3% air. It just maddening.
Is that Bob Swope? Is that,
Yep.
Who was it? Yep.
Yep. Bob and his crew got me changed over, and we were all Grace till then. Grace had a heart attack, but they're still good people.
Yeah. It's a big undoing when y'all do switch over, isn't it?
It was, and a lot of our stuff was kind of, overseen in like a global PO through them, but I just went ahead and threw it out and brought Bob Swope in and said, change over all my high range to 2100, and everything else was Grace. So we were hitting our number we had to for that. And it took about 2 months, and our president and CEO called me and said, did you switch out our high range? And I said, sure did. Put me over here to get a job done. I'm going to do it. What I got to do. Grace couldn't figure out the problem. Sika did.
Yeah. All right. So high range introduction. What do you think is the next turning point there?
Those are your biggest things. Adding your supplementary cementitious materials, your pozzolans, and really your admixtures. I mean, the biggest one is the high range, because now they can go from two ounces hundredweight to 6, 7, and they can make it do anything you want. If you just want a little extra, you want to go from a 4 to a 5 inch slump, that's fine. We can put a little bit in. If you want to go from a 4 to a 12 and not have any segregation, so it really changed the game for sure. Aggregate wise, there's not been a lot of changes, other than multiple aggregate mixes. If you dealt with anything like 4, 6, 7, like larger material for thick slabs.
Yeah.
That's been different, but everything else has been pretty much the same. What we're seeing a lot nowadays, in the Northern Virginia market and in the Richmond market, is a tremendous amount of thermal concrete that you really didn't see 20 years ago. Nobody heard of it. But that's a lot of, fine aggregate as far as sand, but a lot of like pea gravel, smaller size stuff, number 7, number 8 stone. So that's a lot more prevalent than it ever was. We used to do a little bit of duck bank, but that was easy peasy. But this new stuff it's really going in, because they've got to encase those things on data centers.
Yeah. We talked about what was that episode? I'm going to look real quick so people can look it up. We did row concrete. That was episode 138. So if y'all want to learn about that, look that one up. Episode 138 is low row concrete, the hidden key to cooler, more efficient data centers. Yeah, we talked to Silverback Concrete about that. Well, let's get up to current day. We can talk about what, a favorite subject on this podcast is type 1L cement. I would say that would be the next big change to the group. We've been living it for 6 years now?
Wow. It has been 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my thinking, 10, 20 years ago, I mean, that's a major change. It was all type 1, type 2. Every once in a while, you got like a type 3, that a fast setting deal, but no producer wants to drain their bins out for a small job of, a fast setting cement. But type 1L has come out like a lion and really just said, here it is. We were told that it would be available type 1, 2, and 1L for as long as we needed it to be. And then it kind of changed in about a year, and it was nope, all type L. Environmentally speaking, it is less intrusive to the environment to produce than a normal type 1, type 2. But I'm not sure if enough was done on that. I think from a contractor standpoint, we're hearing a lot of stuff about spotty setting with the type 1L as opposed to a type 1, 2, where they could really kind of pinpoint when it was going to go. But yeah, that is it's a major change. You wouldn't think of it. It's just cement, it's just powder, but it's an awful lot of limestone in there. I mean, and our first concern is, how is all that limestone in the cement going to counteract with all the limestone when you're using a 57 limestone? Is that going to overkill something? But it's been okay on that. Strength-wise, have been pretty similar. I don't see anything crazy. I think it's more of an issue on the finisher's end, on a finishing standpoint with that material.
Yeah, different methods of putting it down and finishing it and curing it.
You guys in the field notice a big difference? I mean, obviously you can't probably get type 1, 2 anymore, but
it really depends who you're talking to. I mean, man, the finishers, God bless them. They just go out there and get it done. And, they've learned. I think there's guys out there that are worried about complaining about what they're getting. And they're, the guys, the journeymen that are out there that travel. I mean, the finishers are traveling guys. They travel from job to job, because you're not finishing at the same job from day to day, right? You're one job one day, you're trying to get it down, get it finished, because you got to be somewhere, 100, 200 miles away the next day to put it down again. So, yeah, it really depends on if people are paying attention. I think I've asked finishers before. It's like, hey man, you're seeing a difference. It's a little stickier and things like that. But I think what was interesting back then, I was kind of wrapping up, or part of my last couple projects that I was on the operations side. So we talked about SCMs, fly ash and slag, and that was kind of, in my career on the operations side and buying out concrete, that was kind of the go-to for a value engineering option. You would say, the fly ash and the slag mixes were cheaper. And if you, showed that how much you could save on projects, You know, you could talk the engineer into doing it and you just say, hey, we can get to what you need. You just, be a little bit more flexible on your spec. And, but when Type 1L was introduced, that went away really quick. Like that fly ash mixes and the slag mixes, it was no longer cheap. And at I think at points it was even a premium.
It was, yes.
Straight mix.
Premium. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember
they sold the ash in the market, and then everybody was buying ash because it was such a savings from a producer's point. And then everything started drying up, and then you couldn't find ash anywhere. And they were committed to jobs, and it was very, very tough situation. But from a Virginia area, ready mix producers, we've been very fortunate. So we changed up the Virginia ready mix board of directors a little bit over the last 3 or 4 months. But for the last probably 4 years, we made a conscious effort as producers to have all of our major cement manufacturers that service our market on our board of directors. So we had back then S-Rock, which are they Quikrete now? We had Heidelberg, we had Roanoke. So we kind of had them all in there. So we really, as a board and executive committee, really got to know. We had the inside scoop, what was coming, when it was coming. Obviously, they wanted our feedback also, but they wanted to let us know that, hey guys, this is not slowing down. It's not going to be. It's an option you can use over here. It's got to go that way. Which, I think cement producers 10 years ago became absolutely scared to death of the environmental results of what could happen with some of the environmental groups that are out there nowadays. And there's no doubt they got to enough people in Maryland and Virginia, lawmakers, and really pushed them to kind of hold us accountable, which from a producer standpoint, there's not a whole lot we can do. And using that cement helps a little bit. So.
Yeah. Jeff, you're being very PC. I appreciate it. I have a different opinion on that, and I've shared it on the podcast, but we won't get that in today. If you like to be on the podcast, I'll invite you back on. We can debate it a little bit. I got stats, and I'm looking it up real quick. I was trying to figure out what the percentage of Type 1L in the Mid-Atlantic. It's about
75.
What do you think is 75%? 1L used. And it was funny because I was talking to a supplier, and when things were changing over, he's like, man, we use Type 1L all the time. And when it's available, we use it. That was before the switch.
It's a good product. No doubt. It's a good product. It works. I think they're going to continue to refine it.
Yeah.
Anything.
So, yeah, that's a good lead into, we got time here, a few minutes. Let's talk about what we think what the future looks like.
That's going to be very interesting. I think you're going to see, unmanned trucks on the road for sure. I mean, heck, 5, 6, 7 years ago at ConAg or World of Concrete, you're watching remote control mixers, and one guy goes out there and drives it, and then remote controls the rest of them on the job site. So I think that, what do they call that? Autonomous vehicles. So I think that's definitely coming. The number one problem for a ready mix producer is drivers. You can't get them. There's no 20-year-old kids nowadays who are like, I think I want to drive a concrete truck. They might think that at 7, they quickly lose that when they're going to be about 20. Trying to find, hire, promote, and grow our drivers is the number one problem for a producer. So I think some kind of autonomous vehicle is going to happen for sure. Heck, I just saw that, Amazon's delivering packages via drone now. Well, if we can drone concrete out there, we need something pretty heavy to get that thing moving. But from a material standpoint, I don't know what else the cement community can do to, mitigate the carbon footprint other than the 1L. I'm sure they have engineers way smarter than me working on it right now, but something's got to be coming your way. I don't know what other, SCM could be out there. We've looked at tests with, all kind of stuff, and nothing's really there. Something pops up, but I think the bulk of it could be in any kind of new type change of cement as they continue to refine the Type 1L. And then really your main engineers are on the cement producers and on the admix producers. So I would not be surprised to see some new cutting edge materials out there on the admix side for sure.
Yeah. We definitely continue on the blended cement side of things. I think there's talk of some clays and some other things that are out there. And there was an article posted by a group. I got to check it out. Hopefully we'll talk about it on the podcast. I got to read through it. 48 pages of the future of blended cement. I think it was on ACI. Tyler Lay and Eric Kohler, a couple other folks wrote. So we got to check that out, see what they're saying. Yeah, I think it really depends on where you are in the country too, because again, looking at the numbers from last year, I mean, down in Houston, man, they're importing a lot of cement.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, you look at the numbers down there compared to the Mid-Atlantic, and it is like dwarfs us. It's like they pour a ton of concrete down there.
Yep. And blew my mind. We were looking at a change, which we did to a product called Verify. If you ever heard of that product. So actually, Paul Chaney and myself went and kind of spent some time with a producer down that area. And I said, well, how many trucks do you have it on? And he said, right now, I only have it on like 450 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. 450 trucks just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Blew my mind. But you think about it, if things get back to the housing boom with the data centers on top of it right now, that it was, let's say, the housing in 2005 and the data center work we have now, if it booms, there's no cement consumption in the U.S. will not keep up.
Yeah.
We're going to have imports without a doubt, which I think you've got some players now that are already importing. So that's probably cutting a little bit into it.
Yeah. Well, the market overall was softening last year. So we did less than we did in 2024. So 2025 was a little bit down from, if you look at the whole country overall. And then again, you got to look at each region on how they did, but it was softening a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what 2026 brings us and how we all fare there. Yeah, I think this was great. This was a great snapshot of the last 30 years. And I think it was great to hear even a very localized, you're here in the Mid-Atlantic with me.
Yep.
It's nice to hear the history of that and how things have changed in this region. If folks want to reach out to you and learn more about you and Chaney, what's the best way?
Sure. Anything on Chaney, obviously, is ChaneyEnterprises.com. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is jslagle, that's SLAGLE, at ChaneyEnterprises.com. Or they can shoot by phone at 301-399-2224. Always love to talk about the industry and ready-mix product, for sure.
All right, Jeff, I appreciate you coming on the show today. If you want to do this again, hit me up. I enjoyed our conversation.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And folks, until next time, let's keep it concrete.